So yeah, so we're doing this so that when people join us, they actually see this.
Very nice. It looks great.
So Sarah, I can hear myself.
Yeah, I'll put my headphones in.
Okay. So we have, I think, 49 attendees.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we're very excited. We had 10 sign up, I think, 13 between yesterday and today.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, we just keep pushing it out and, you know, people show up. It's like, huh.
Hey, that works.
I know. I do need to figure out something on the share though, because I don't think I want to share the whole entire thing. Because then I can't see my script.
Oh, okay.
And that can be, again, a little bit of a problem here. So, Sarah, I might need to help me figure this out, how I did this again.
Okay.
So, you know, every time I think I have it all together. Oh, well. Okay, so I have the script up here, which is good.
Okay.
The only thing I can't see are the speakers. What can you see right now?
I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Yeah, what can you see right now?
I see you.
You just see me, okay.
Yep.
I see you, and then I see Lori Marks. I see a camera for Sarah, and I see myself.
Sarah. Here we go. So I don't really need.
Oh, you're under there.
I'm under here. I need to see that.
Yeah, but I think you can probably pull that over there.
Well, I already have it over there, so I can take this over here, right?
And then minimize that, right?
Okay. Okay, now I can see you all. This is great. So then if I want to share my screen, sorry, we're dealing with a few things here. I want to do this one, right? And then what do you all see?
I see your slide, and I see all of us.
Okay, I think that's what I need.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So, okay. Whew. This really shouldn't be that hard. So like now we're starting to get techie and trying to figure it all out. So, all right. So how are you both today?
Good. How are you?
Good, doing really well. We're Lori ZK, Lori ZK. I was just telling Lori M that we have almost 50 on the call today.
Great.
So yeah, that's very exciting stuff.
Did you have a goal in mind of what a good number for you is, or?
You know, I mean, at this point, we do want to get to the point where we max out
Yeah.
the webinars, but you know, our max right now is 100, and the fact that we're halfway there, and this is only the second one we've done.
Yeah.
That's great.
For us is good. I mean, I think we were, and really the number of people that we've pushed it out to, and how that has all worked. I want to say, like, on our email list, because we're still building our email. It's just so funny, you know, we've been in business 11 years, we're still building our email list, but we haven't really, we haven't taken that approach before. So we're just making sure that we're getting it to the right people. So our conversion rates are very, very high.
Good.
On our email list. So we've got,
That's good.
yeah, our conversion rates are like 67%.
Oh, wow.
For people who are seeing it, and we're seeing an increase of new conversions off of other platforms. So, you know, we're getting people to convert off of social media, and we're getting people to convert off of, you know, different things. So we're trying different things. So the fact that we're, you know, 50, I think that's pretty darn good for right now.
Mm-hmm.
and this is new, we're not like, Classy and some of these others who've been doing these webinars for, Blackbaud forever, and they have
Right.
thousands of names in their arsenal. So just to kind of let you guys know, so again, like the first 5 minutes, we're going to welcome everybody to the call, thank those who were here last week, welcome the new people. One of the new things that we did do is I told you we were going to make a slide, so there's going to be a couple different slides here as well. So this slide is just for people who are arriving, and so we give them about 2 minutes. So we started like 2:02 is kind of when we start, just give people time to log on and figure out their systems. And then this slide will come down. I'll stop sharing this as we get through the Q&A and kind of, actually what I might do is as I welcome everybody to the call, leave this slide up just so people have it. And we'll go over all the details. And then when we get to the Q&A section, then I will, and then when I introduce the topic, I'll turn off the slide share and go to you. This slide will come up again at the end, as well as our additional upcoming webinars. So we're playing with a little bit of more graphic elements as well. So your names and contact information will be up there if anybody wants to get a hold of you.
Great.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, just to kind of reiterate, the chat box will not be, you guys will see the chat box if you want to see the chat box, but you don't have to, worry about monitoring the chat box. So Sarah's actually on the other side of the room. She will flag me. I also have the chat box open, so that way you can take a look at that and see exactly what we want to, what I want to talk about, if there's anything that comes up at that point. So please don't feel like you guys have to worry about that whatsoever. Now I'm trying to get my mouse back on the right screen here. I'm trying to think, Sarah, is there anything else that you can think of right now?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, I think I'm muted.
Questions? Any questions that you have?
Just confirm that volume sounds good.
Yes.
Good. Good.
Yes, everybody sounds good. Can you hear us clearly?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you see everybody clearly?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sarah, we're going to actually turn off her video once we get started.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about looking up at the ceiling that Sarah has.
Yeah, what is that feeling?
We're in the old BF Goodrich, one of the old BF Goodrich factories.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have these like really open ceilings, and you have all of the exposed ductwork and everything. So we've got, gosh, our ceilings are probably 14 feet high.
Wow.
Yeah, you have a lot of, it's like the Idea Center. They're about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just these old
Mhm.
buildings. So we have big freight elevators in here too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so those are kind of creepy.
Is that a space that's been set up for like startups, incubators and such?
Yeah, so it's Bounce Innovation Hub. So it's a mix of companies in here now. So like when we first moved down here, it was in 2013. So I've been down here a while, and it was mainly like tech startups and biotech startups, but there is a really kind of a mishmash of companies in here now. You still have a lot of those high-tech, biotech companies, but there's also companies like ours, which we're not a startup. We're not what you would technically think of as a startup at all, or were even back then. But you have those who are startups, and then you have people in the ecosystem like us who can provide, mentorship informally and things like that. And now that they opened up the space downstairs in Bounce, it used to be like you'd walk into the building, it was like, oh my gosh, you work here. And then you'd get up to floors like 6, 7, 8, and they're gorgeous. And these really, they've been redone and stuff like that. And then they actually last May opened up Bounce Innovation Hub. They call it the generator downstairs. There's a cafe down there. There's co-working space. There's
Nice.
rentable space, rentable office space and things like that. So you're even seeing more, I think, I don't know, Sarah, are most of the people down there, are you seeing like a lot of creative, like independent, one-off
Yeah, I don't
folks?
know that there's any companies that are using the space down there. I think it's all either like there are some small offices. So I know there's a couple twosomes maybe there, but for the most part, it's like individual people running the space down there.
So, but I mean, there's about 50 companies, or, well, I don't know what it is now. I don't know how many may have left COVID. We were just actually talking a little bit ago. We had a new neighbor that moved in, gosh, I want to say maybe January 1, maybe February 1. And we have not seen him since we've been back, and we've had presence here every day. So we don't know if he just isn't coming back or if he doesn't need to come back, but he was a solo shop, so he probably didn't need space as much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
Krebs and Foster somewhere near you? The dog and Krebs and Foster? So, because you're in like where the airfield is, right? I don't know if that's,
Mm-mm.
no, you're not.
No.
Okay. In a different place. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually, gosh, who, Tekin. That's Taken, Andy Taken, I think is the company. We have. It's the old, there was like an old kind of cheeky Italian restaurant out there. I forget what it's called. But it was right by the airfield. It was on the Circle, and there's a Strickland screen there. So that's probably what you're thinking of. No,
Yes.
we're downtown.
Got it.
Yeah, we're downtown. So, but yeah, there's this, so BF Goodrich used to be kind of a whole city. And
Yeah.
so it's,
Yeah.
we're in one of the buildings that still remains in the BF Goodrich city. So,
The neat
Yeah.
history.
yeah, it's a cool space.
Yeah.
It's a cool space. We have about 1,400 square feet.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So,
How is,
all right.
are people starting to come back into offices, you know, in Akron?
I think there was just an article in the paper today, and I didn't actually get a chance to read it, so downtown is a mess right now in terms of construction and road construction. So people are probably like, it was a pain in the butt to get to work anyway.
Yeah.
Why should I come back and then not be able to park?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what occupancy rates are looking like downtown. There's typically like, University of Akron is right here also. So obviously with students not being around, it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know about the offices. I don't really know much about that, so. Anyway, I know, we do 15 minutes and then it's kind of like, really?
Well, it's better to be prepared than not prepared.
Yeah, it's better safe than sorry.
I know. So how is your day going for both of you?
It's going by fast, actually. I've had a lot today. I know Lori
Yeah.
had the other Lori.
Yeah, busy day. Lots
Yeah,
of meetings
I'm-
this morning. We're making some moves in the organization, and it's just, there's not a dull moment.
Yeah, there's a lot
I
of,
remember when we went, it was March 16th was our last day in the office, and we were only
okay.
for 3 weeks. And they were like, gather things that you wouldn't normally be able to work on so you can do them at home, because now's probably a good time to catch up on that. I still am staring at that pile of things.
There you go.
Yeah, like there's no downtime.
No, I think, we talked about this yesterday. I was talking about it with somebody, and it just feels like, everybody was like, oh, we have to have a Zoom meeting, and we have to have more meetings, and we have to interact. And I was like, I was
More
so
meetings.
tired of Zoom meetings, but it was all said and done.
Yes, I know.
All right, so I am actually going to, in about a minute, I'm gonna actually make this thing go broadcast. So we will edit out this first part of our discussion. So when we post this live, you don't have to worry about
Okay.
being on that. And I'm hoping, I'm going to try one thing here. Great, I can't get my. Just trying to get my PowerPoint to work. Okay, sweet. Okay, that's working. Just making sure that all the stuff is working. All right, I'm actually going to turn broadcast on, so I'm not going to mute you.
Okay.
Have this on so people can see it. I would like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. We're going to give those who are joining us about a minute or two to get logged on. So if you could just be patient with us, we'll be getting started here in about a minute or two. And if you are not supposed to be at making the most of your virtual event, talking about corporate support, you're welcome to join us or stay with us. So I hope you're in the right place. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started today. So welcome everybody to the call today, to our webinar, Making the Most of Your Virtual Event. We're going to be talking about corporate support today. For those of you who were with us last week, we hope you enjoyed this session and welcome back today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're really glad that you're here. So if everyone could just do a quick hello in the chat box just to make sure that you can hear us, that would be great. Just want to make sure, or raise your hand. Awesome. Okay, so I see a lot of hand raises, so I'm glad that you're able to hear us. Thank you for letting us know. It would be terrible for us to have to go through 30 minutes of this and have nobody be able to hear us. So just to let you know, .org Coffee Shop is actually the first part of our free .org Cafe series of professional development opportunities. We're really trying to create some platforms that are very informative, but also relatable and easy to learn from and easy for you to put into action right away in your role in the nonprofit sector. We're going to be launching additional cafe items in the next few months, so stay tuned. Those will be a mix of additional webinars, but also some email newsletters and quick email tidbits that we'll send to you each week if you're interested. Just to go over the format of the webinar today, there will be 2 panelists plus me as the moderator. We will also have an individual, someone monitoring our chat box today. Only the panelists and moderator are going to be visible on the call. Everyone else is going to be muted and off video. So if you're trying to turn your video on or your microphone, you're not going to be able to do that today. The format for today's session is going to be a question and answer session, and we thank those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. We're going to do our best to address those questions during this session. We will also have the chat box enabled during the entire session so that you can ask questions. So we want to make sure that if you have a question that's relevant to a topic that's being discussed or another questions being answered, we will actually do our best to do that during that time so that we don't lose, lose that question or lose that thought train. So go ahead and enter anything in chat when you think about it. At the end of the session, we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions via chat. And also, we're recording these webinars and we'll be posting them to our new YouTube channel. We're getting that set up and it should be ready to go in the next week or so. And as soon as we have that all set up and ready to go and all the videos and webinars edited and loaded up there, we will push that out to you so that you can go back. And if there's something that you missed that you want to recapture, you're going to be able to do that as well. So today, we're going to introduce you to our speakers and talk about the topic of today. So today is part 2 of a 4-part series on making the most of your virtual event. Today we're going to be talking with our panelists about corporate support. And so for those of you that are in fundraising, we know it's never has been super easy to gain corporate support even prior to COVID. Now it's even more likely a challenge, especially with events changing the way that they're being done right now. So our panelists today are going to help us understand that corporate environment better. So I want to introduce our speakers quickly, and then we'll go right into our question and answer session. Our first panelist is Lori Zoss-Kraska, and she is the founder and chief principal of Growth Owl, LLC. And Growth Owl specializes in revenues-based consulting services for nonprofits, public media, and small business. She has over 20 years experience in corporate sponsorship, executive sales management, training, digital strategies, and marketing roles, and has earned her reputation for establishing pathways to exceed revenue, fundraising goals, build high-performance teams, develop relationships quickly, and outpace expectations. Before she started Growth Owl, she held key leadership and corporate sponsorship positions at IdeaStream, DAC Group, Clear Channel, which is now iHeartMedia, the University of Phoenix Midwest campuses, and CitySearch.com. Lori has been a regular featured speaker and panelist at the Public Media Development and Marketing Conference, PBS Annual Meeting, American Marketing Association, Alumni Speakers Bureau, and various local professional organizations. Lori holds an MBA in Systems Management from Baldwin Wallace, and when time allows, she's an adjunct professor in Communications and Public Relations at her alma mater. She's also an advisory board member at Holy Name High School. Our second panelist is also a Lori, so I'd like to introduce Lori Marks. Lori Marks is the Senior Director of Foundation Corporate Support at IdeaStream, which is a nonprofit public media organization that includes WVIZ PBS, and then additional channels of public television service. 90.3 WCPN, WCLV Classical 104.9, and IdeaStream Education, the Ohio Channel, and lots of other channels.
Yes.
Covers. They also manage the State House News Bureau on behalf of Ohio Public Broadcasting Stations. Lori is an experienced community relations, marketing, and fundraising development professional with diverse experience in the areas of creating community partnerships, sales, program partnership development, training, raising funds, and advocacy. In her current role, she oversees 8 folks that include the foundation and corporate team, as well as the underwriting team. She and her team are responsible for securing more than $7 million in revenue each year, and they do that through grants, proposal, partnerships, sponsorships, and underwriting. Lori graduated from Miami University with a BA in Speech Communication and Public Relations, and from Cleveland State with a master's in Labor Relations and Human Resources. But in her spare time, her favorite thing that she likes to do and her biggest joy is being a mom and raising her 10-year-old son. She also enjoys spending time with family, friends, decorating, working in her yard, which I'm sure you have time to do all of this, right?
I know, really.
Planning parties, attending her son's sports, and is a avid Cleveland sports fan and a Notre Dame fan as well. So thank you, Lori's, for joining us today. We're just going to get right into this right now. So our first question that we'd like to ask you today is, can you talk a little bit about the corporate environment currently? Is it still happening? What are corporations looking for right now? So Lori Marks, I'd like to start off with you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me be a part of this today. It's great to be here. So what I've seen at IdeaStream, and it can translate across to all of the organizations represented today, is the big four things that corporations are interested in, and they're very much still here and very active in the community, is first and foremost basic health and human service needs, fulfilling those needs throughout Northeast Ohio and greater Akron area, especially with what's happened with COVID-19. So being able to work with those nonprofit organizations to make sure that they are giving those basic needs to the community is of a top priority to the corporations. Anything COVID-19 related, so anything that you can do to give back to the community during this time is also of great importance to the corporations. And the next would be education, especially virtual learning. Since March, when schools went mainly online, corporations were looking at ways that they could help assist with those efforts so that students could get their education in that way. And then most recently, racial equity. Partnerships that involve multiple nonprofit organizations together, new initiatives to address this throughout the community is of importance to corporations as well. So what they're looking at and what they're interested in is, like I had said, partnerships with multiple organizations. So I can give you some examples with IdeaStream, but in the racial equity space, IdeaStream's working with Karamu House right now to do a piece that is very attractive to KeyBank. IdeaStream alone and Karamu alone might have not have brought that partnership together that KeyBank would be interested in partnering, but together, the sum of the two parts has created something that is of interest to a corporation. The City Club of Cleveland, they do their forums, and IdeaStream is able to partner with them to get that message out into the community. And we're also partnering with the Anisfeld Wolf Book Awards that normally is an in-person event, and we're able to do that with them throughout Northeast Ohio. IdeaStream has the ability to get out news and information, but within your own organization, look at what your superpower is. What is it that you are able to do in your own organization that you can elevate during this time, and that you could partner with another organization that would form a partnership that's attractive to a corporation. And also, two other things to consider is election 2020. That's a hot topic for several of the reasons that I stated initially, and as well as the census, because this is very important that we get out in the community and stress the importance of everyone filling out that census form, because it does shape what our next 10 years will be like in the Northeast Ohio community as far as funding and such.
Lori Zoss, if you could talk a little bit about kind of corporations as a whole, especially as they relate to maybe some smaller nonprofits.
Yeah. I think there's really good news for smaller nonprofits, because there's now this emphasis from large companies, and I'm talking Fortune 500 companies, and I've got a footprint of clients throughout the country. So I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of different geographical areas, but a lot of Fortune 500s and larger companies are designating usually someone at a vice president's level, like a VP of community affairs or corporate affairs, to get more involved with smaller community-based nonprofits. I'll give you a great example. In the city of Atlanta, Georgia, there are some smaller nonprofits that are working in areas that lack some resources in terms of education and maybe different types of trades training. Coca-Cola, I think we all know who Coca-Cola is, right? One of the brands of the world. They have an initiative with their VP of Corporate Affairs to get involved with smaller nonprofits, and these are a group of nonprofits they're interested in. And they have a pillar, one of their philanthropic pillars is education in the city of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So that's just one example. And what's great about Fortune 500s and larger companies getting involved is that they usually have a larger amount of money to play with, but because they're talking to multiple nonprofits that are smaller, a $10, $15, $20,000 gift can go a really long way for a nonprofit that has 5 people. So I would encourage you, don't be scared to go after, you know, the big fish per se. They're ready to hear from you, and more than ever. So I think that's very exciting. And as Lori Marks said, anything, any type of curriculum or programming you have within your nonprofit that can be a part of a virtual classroom, a part of a virtual field trip. We see nonprofits, especially in the marine mammal, zoo, rescue space, doing this type of online field trip. Sponsors are very interested in supporting that kind of content. So between the Fortune 500s wanting to get more involved in community, and when I say community, I mean the state. So just because, like I get Coca-Cola in Atlanta is one example, but I find that they're interested, if they're headquartered in a specific state, they are interested in learning what different communities are doing. And the last thing I want to throw in there, though, is don't be afraid to talk to your existing donors. Where are they employed? That's a great.
Oh, we lost Lori. Did we lose everybody? Oh, shoot. Is everybody back?
Yeah.
Okay, we just had, I'm sorry for this. We just had a quick little technical difficulty where we all froze. Lori Marks, were you able to hear?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
hopefully the panelists were able to continue on with what they were saying. So I apologize for that we froze here at .org. So I guess this is one of the things we all have to be cognizant of, is that we're just going to have this. So I hope if everybody could wave, were you able to hear the Lori's, that last section? No interruption. Great. Thank you. Okay, well, good. I'm glad that you guys were on it. We didn't miss anything. So how do you identify corporate sponsors? So you talk about Fortune 500 companies. You know, how do you know who might be some good corporate citizens who might be willing to support you?
I can start with that one. There's paid approaches you could go down, or you could also, there's some free options, and it's for any size, large or small nonprofits. So I'll start with some paid options that could help you identify corporate sponsors. First and foremost, Foundation Center Online. If for those who are not familiar with that, it's at fdo.org. And what they do is they provide different memberships where you can go in and do a lot of deep dive research on a particular company or organization you would like to vet. And they have membership levels at the essential and professional level that ties you into an annual subscription. Or if you are limited in a budget, they do have a monthly $199 subscription where you can go in and pull up all the information you want from certain organizations. You can see how they, who they give to. They give pie charts on, you know, what area they focus on, and it's a lot of good behind the scenes data that you can collect. There's also a fundraising intelligence software called iWave, which does roughly the same thing. But with that subscription, you can go in and download like board members and enter reports in if you're looking for specific companies that fund a specific area. What's nice about Foundation Center too, and our current climate is kind of making that a little bit of a challenge, is where if you're in Cleveland, you could go in person in downtown Cleveland, but you can also access all that information in your local library. And I know right now Cleveland doesn't have a plan to open, I don't think, until after July 20th. And I looked and it looks like Akron and Summit are in the same boat. But after that July 20th date, as they start opening up and allowing more patrons to enter, you can go to those local libraries and access what Foundation Center has to offer at no charge to you. So you can pay for it if you want to have it on site, but you always have that free option. Also too, free, look online. Like there's so many events in Cleveland, maybe not so much right now, but typically there is. Look online at the event and see who the sponsors are and see if that event aligns with your mission and what you do as an organization. And that'll give you a really great idea of who is funding in that space. That's a great resource for you as well. And then last, there's an organization called Philanthropy Ohio. And that organization is developed more for those who are in philanthropy and are looking to find organizations and nonprofits to support. So you'll get a lot of those decision makers at the corporate level that join and participate in Philanthropy Ohio. And they have what's called a quarterly corporate roundtable. And I know this because I sat on it once when I was not on the fundraising side as community relations at Advance Ohio. But the roundtable gets together and these leaders talk about upcoming initiatives throughout the Northeast Ohio community in which they can support. And John Guest, he is the contact. He's the managing director of the Northern Ohio office. He's a good person to pick up the phone, email, and call and get to know, because sometimes he can help you find ways to get your organization in front of that group or those decision makers, or offer advice of how to go about it. So that's another tool that you can use to get the lay of the land and see who's out there and who's a good prospect for you to reach out to.
And I would just add that when I'm doing training around with advancement and development folks on how do you find names, how do you find information, LinkedIn is just a gold mine. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. I can't tell you how wonderful.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Especially, if you're prospecting in an area that you're not familiar with, like me, if I have clients out of state, I don't know the land like I do in Cleveland and Akron. LinkedIn is a phenomenal resource. And I'm talking about regular, good old LinkedIn, not the type you have to buy a premium package, all of that. So it's all about using the right search criteria when you're looking. So my advice to you is you probably have companies in mind that you'd like to find names for. So my advice is to search titles and the company name. So for example, going back to what I spoke to earlier about larger Fortune 500s and VPs of community affairs. So if I'm looking for Sherwin-Williams, I would type VP corporate or community affairs or corporate affairs, Sherwin-Williams, Cleveland. See what comes up. It acts very similar to Google. I mean, if you Google, you can search on LinkedIn. And that I really, honestly, 85% of the time I get what I need. The other great thing about LinkedIn is that it's a very trusted online environment. I think LinkedIn and its members have done a really good job of keeping it, cat video free per se, right? It's really professional use. So you have the ability to reach out to people via message on LinkedIn, where maybe that message could get lost if you're emailing someone who's used to getting 120 emails a day. So that's something to think of. Now, if you want to get more sophisticated with LinkedIn, they do have something that's pretty amazing. It's called Sales Navigator. Now, Sales Navigator on LinkedIn is something you have to pay for. I think it's $72 a month. So there is a price attached, but the targeting is amazing. So let's say you're a nonprofit in Akron. Let's say you're a food bank, Akron Food Bank, and you're looking for corporations to not only donate food, but maybe also donate some money, or corporate sponsors. And you know that you've had a lot of success with people that are executive directors of marketing or executive directors of philanthropy in these organizations. I can target those specific people in the Akron area by age, by gender, by length of time they've been in their jobs. It is amazing. So it's almost like taking, if any of you are familiar with Facebook targeting on Facebook, it's very similar to the Sales Navigator in LinkedIn. So it's pretty amazing the detail you can get to. I mean, are these people pet owners? It's pretty amazing, but it does come with a price. But I would say just start with LinkedIn, start with some searches around the titles that you have the most interest in and the organizations you have the most interest in. And that's going to help you a lot. Otherwise, as I said earlier, finding out where your donors are employed, I'm telling you, that has been huge for my clients, and usually a step that's easily missed. But it is amazing. You're gonna find data that's going to surprise you, and it's going to lead you exactly to where you need to go.
So now that we know places that we can go to find these people, what is the best way to actually contact them? So many of us used to use networking events and other types of things, but now those aren't happening. So what are some ways that we can reach these people now that we know who they are?
So what I would suggest, and Lori, that's such a great point with LinkedIn, to get that information. If you're able to reach them through LinkedIn, you could always send a message to them through that platform. I would also suggest you go visit the websites of the corporations that you're interested in visiting to see what they have out on their website. And if they have any specific information as to how you should go about contacting. Some are very specific, they outline it, some don't, but that would be a great start. And if you do have a website and a company that's very specific on how to reach out, follow the directions and the instructions. So if it's very specific that we only reach out if you fill out this specific form or phone call or email, follow that. Don't do anything outside of that because that's how they wish to be contacted. Network with those that you want to know or you want to get to know. And yeah, it is hard right now in this environment to be at events and network. But participating even on webinars such as this one, or different meetings and anything virtual right now, that's an opportunity as well, because while you're on the call, you can see who else is there and then reach out to that person afterwards. I found during this time, and it could be because everyone's working from home, and naturally I find that you can get a lot more done during the day without having to worry about driving to this funder or going to meet someone here. Everything's virtual, so it gives you more time in the day to take advantage of that. I've received very good response when I've reached out to those I want to meet, and we find a half hour here, an hour there to set up a time so we can discuss. And I'll be transparent right from the start of what it is I'd like to discuss with them. And if I'm not quite even sure what it is that company or organization is willing to invest in, I'll just say, I'd love some time so we can sit down and I can hear about what's important to XYZ company and what we have going on here at IdeaStream. And in that conversation, something will come up that is of interest. And if nothing comes up at the moment, at least you know what they're interested in. So should something come up down the road, you can reach out again.
I think the most important thing you can do if you're reaching out to someone by email, which is kind of what most people are doing now, is aligning that organization's mission to whatever your project is, or whatever your mission is. That research to go on the website, like Lori said, and to find their philanthropic pillars, or what do they support?
Mm-hmm.
What is their mission statement for philanthropy? If you could put that in the email very clearly and clearly attach it to how what you're offering or what you want to talk about fulfills that mission, that is half the battle. I've experimented with different types of email messaging with my clients. And in terms of getting the large clients, the airlines, the large retailers, etc., that putting the mission up there and putting the project with it, keeping it very clear and concise, that has been very, very receptive. And I actually had two at Delta and Coca-Cola, both complimented me for taking the time to know what their pillars are. So just taking the extra step to have more information to connect the dots is great. The other thing you could do is just go to do a Google News search. Is the company you want to speak with in the news, obviously in a positive way? Is there something going on that kind of fulfills the needs of what they want to do? So another great example of that, I'm going to use Delta as an example. I know that Delta has an interest in getting more involved in veterans, specifically being able to provide veterans with low cost or no cost airfare. I also knew that in the city of Atlanta, there was a nonprofit that I work with that works with VFWs, veterans and active military. Perfect. And we were able to get a meeting fairly quickly. So that's just another example of just going the extra mile to make sure this makes sense. You know, I'm not going to send my companion animal clients to, you know, Estee Lauder. That's not going to make, you know, it's got to make sense, right? You just have to make sure that it's like matchmaking. I like to tell clients that if I do my job right and I'm helping them, I'm matchmaking them with the right types of organizations. So just those two things, looking at the mission and looking at what are they in the news for and what you might have to offer that goes with what they're doing is going to help you immensely.
So now that we know where to find them, best ways to reach them, now you think, how much do we ask them for? So given that we're talking, you know, a lot of the nonprofits that are on this call today are looking or are either currently taking their events digital, or they're looking to take their events digital, and they're looking for like, how do you make the most of like a sponsorship level, or how do you develop those in a way that makes sense given kind of this environment?
I can take this one to start. So first and foremost, especially when we have events at IdeaStream, is I take a look at what other sponsorship packages look like for other nonprofits and other events in Cleveland. So right now, if there are other virtual events that are happening, most likely if you go out on the website, you can get a list of what their package is and the different assets that, that complement each sponsorship level. But first and foremost, like anything else, we have to create a budget because we need to know what our expenditures are and how much sponsorship funding we need for an event, especially if you're not selling tickets, or since it's being in person, you might have to cover the costs associated with the event with your sponsorships. And then create a list of assets. What are you able to provide the sponsors in this unique time? So you won't have in-person signage at the event. They won't have a table at the event so that participants can come up and speak with them. They won't be able to stand on the stage and say a few words in front of the audience. But what are you doing digitally, and what are you doing promotion-wise to get that event out there? And where can you put a logo or a sponsorship message? And during the virtual event, what time can you give that sponsor so that they can take the time to say a few words? And then so from that, create packages. So if you have an event that's going to cost $20,000, and let's say you have room for a presenting sponsor at the top and 2 smaller sponsors, you know, make your presenting $10,000 and your smaller ones $5,000. And what are the things that you can only provide to one sponsor? Those are the assets that you would provide to your top sponsor. And then from there, work your way down of what the largest sponsor gets versus what your smaller sponsors are able to receive. And lastly, I would say be flexible. We actually had a situation here at IdeaStream, and it was actually a little bit pre-COVID, but we had an event in the fall, and our lowest sponsorship package was $5,000. And when the team went out to share it with companies, we got a lot of feedback. You know, this is great, but I can only do it for $2,500. And we had enough people say they would do it for $2,500 that we could fill those 2 $5,000 sponsorship packages. So we listened to what our corporations were telling us, and we went ahead and we took those 2 5s and created 4 $2,500 packages, and we were able to still make ends meet. So be flexible, listen to what your feedback you're getting, especially in this environment now with COVID and not knowing for sure how it's affected different companies and organizations.
I think Lori's right. You know, some of it is trial and error. You know, the old school salespeople will tell you in broadcasting, how much should I sell this for? How much are you going to pay for it? You know, that's the old, you know, some of that though is reality, because some of it really is supply and demand. So here's a great example. If you are a nonprofit that actually has figured a way out to have an event. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be all virtual. You actually have a way that you have social distancing, all of that. Excellent, because there are some folks who've been able to do it. Now, a hand sanitation station or a social distancing signage would basically be worth nothing 2 years ago, but to maybe a hospital system or a university right now, that could be a $10,000 ask. It really just varies on what's going on. So and Lori said this earlier, if you have anything that can surround the hot buttons right now that she listed, especially around COVID and good health practices, my advice is to go higher than you normally go, because that is what the market is demanding. They want to be around that kind of stuff. You know, we know that advertisers and sponsors, they're still spending money. They're just spending it in a different way. You might not see them on TV and radio as much anymore, but they want to get involved where they can really have an impact. So that's my suggestion. I mean, some of it is really just supply and demand and experimenting, and always going in a little higher is always better than to go in too low.
So, you know, now that you have the packages, what are you looking at in terms of, you know, some creative ways, right? Again, you know, we have to be creative. You don't have the signage, you don't have special things that you can have at their table. What are some creative ways to honor sponsors and table hosts at virtual events?
That's a very good question, because you're absolutely right. You don't have that hands-on, face-to-face situation in those virtual events as you would if you had a table signage or you had something sponsored at the event. I can give an example with our partnership with the City Club. And I can speak to this because IdeaStream broadcasts and distributes City Club forums. And every Friday, their Friday forums, they have a room full of tables. Each table has a sponsor. They announce the sponsors at the beginning of the forums, and then we go live on IdeaStream platforms. So what they've done is they've taken all existing table sponsors and they've come up with a virtual forum sponsorship package. Thank all the table sponsors for that particular forum. So let's say you had a forum coming up on July 10th and you had 4 table sponsors. Well, automatically they become the virtual forum sponsors. And so then they become part of the promotion leading up to the forum, the signups, mentioned during the forum, etc., to give them the visibility for being the table sponsor of the event, because their table sponsorships is what made that event possible, if you will. It covered expenses. So there's still ways that you can honor those. You can do like your Zoom forums and virtual forums. You could always create like a PowerPoint slide that just has all the funders listed on that as well. Any of your promotion, social media, if you're you know, tweeting it out on social media or putting a Facebook post, you know, tag the corporation and put that in there. And then this is very popular, especially in today's age, because everyone has had to shift so much with COVID and like what they're doing to protect employees and their, you know, and their customers, and racial equity, allowing that company or corporation just a few minutes or a minute to talk to the audience and get a message across. That's a lot of great value to corporations these days.
I'm going to bridge off what Lori just said there. And if you're thinking, well, how am I going to get this person that's a sponsor to be seen by my, you know, people who bought tickets, what have you? Very easy, no cost. Have your sponsor have an employee at that company take an iPhone video, an Android video, maybe 15, 30 seconds of a vice president or an executive, and put it in an email blast that's talking about the event and how it's changed, but we still have support. And here's so-and-so to tell you about why they're still supporting this. That's something that's no cost. You're probably going to do an email blast anyway that you can include online. Also, most events that I've worked with nonprofits, they have some sort of auction. So my guess is you're putting this auction online, whether you're selling t-shirts or autographed items or big trips, everything's going online. Of course, your sponsors can be a part of that, but don't miss a beat. Not only should they be on the auction pages, the confirmation emails, the receipts, anything is inventory at this point for logos and links. So that's another thing. Lori talked about social media, and that's something very easy you can do at no cost that has value for the sponsor as well. And also, any way you can incorporate them to be able for them to talk about why they are supporting your organization. That's a big thing. So we talked about the video. That can also be, if video is just not an option, you know, just like a written little testimonial that can also be emailed out with a link to that organization's website. So just keep the sponsor involved and give them options. And they understand. They don't be afraid to call them that things are going to change. They know things are going to change. So just keep the lines of communication open.
So, you know, this is a unique opportunity, as both of you have mentioned, right? There's so many things that, because of the digital world, that we can do at relatively no cost or much lower cost than, you know, printing signs and things like that. I know one of the things that we see is that it's hard sometimes to figure out, like, what is the actual value of a particular thing to somebody. So how do you actually, you know, figure out like what somebody gets at what particular level, and how do you really incorporate those into a virtual event?
I can take this to start. Take a look at all the assets you have available to write your sponsors, and what gives your sponsor, what assets give your sponsor the most exposure or the most personal time with the audience, and value those at a higher level than logo on a promotion and such. So if you have your presenting sponsors and then a few smaller ones on the bottom, and only one can say a few words before the event, well, then that's definitely a high level exposure that gives you that one-on-one FaceTime with the participants. So it's still important to have the levels, but break it down and be very specific about everything you're providing and how that gives them the exposure over some of the other sponsorship levels that they have. Because any event we do, be it virtual or in person, you're going to have logo recognition on something, you're going to have name recognition on something, but what are the ones that provide a higher touch point?
So basically, if you have, you know, 10,000 followers on Facebook and you only have 10 on Twitter, you want to make sure that you have that proper parity of where you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or if you're sending out, you know, 10 email reminders as opposed to just one, you have to make sure that they're getting.
Right. And so I would be very specific on how many you get. And you can also do that too with, you know, Facebook. Let's say you're going to send out 10. Well, if you're the top sponsor, maybe you're included in all 10, but you're the lower sponsors and you'll be only included in 4 because of space. You know, those are things to take care of, and, you know, and be transparent too. Some corporations want to know what the reach is. So how many followers do you have and how many people are going to see this message? That helps with the sell as well.
My advice is don't overcomplicate this. I think one of the biggest mistakes that organizations will make, not just nonprofits, but one of the biggest places they kind of go wrong is they go down this rabbit hill. They bring everyone together in a conference room. Oh no, we're going to have to move this event to digital. And then you've got someone who's really even keel, and then there's somebody else in the room that's, you know, it's a disaster, and you're in there forever and you leave the meeting more confused than you were. So to avoid that, you start with your sponsor. So before you even have any type of internal discussion, talk to your sponsor. Again, they're expecting that something's going to be different. And if you haven't called them yet, they're probably surprised, why haven't you talked to me yet about this? So you talk to them and find out what is of most importance to them. And Lori kind of hit on this, because my guess is there's a good chance what you thought was going to be most important to them is not. So they might not have any interest in being in any of the social media stuff, but just the idea that their president can be in a 30-second video that's going to go out to over 5,000 people who were attendees, that's huge. And that's all they're going to need. But you don't know that until you have the conversation. So that is my advice at this point, is start with the client. Don't start with an internal meeting. Take the information you learn from the client, then bring it back to the meeting to kind of build something that the client's really going to like.
So as we, as we've kind of gone through this, there's a lot of things that you have to think about. I mean, I think one of the things that I hear as a common theme is like, you really have, a corporation is a donor. So anytime that you're donor focused and thinking about that donor, whether it's an individual or corporation, think about it. It's the way they're going to react to it, and think very donor centric, donor first. Is that what I'm hearing pretty much from both of you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
By the way, when I said client, I mean donors. I use those inner sponsors. They're all the same.
They all blend.
They all blend.
So we are going to actually have the Lories give us their final thoughts here in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to encourage you to please use this time to put any questions into chat. We have about 15 minutes total before we can wrap up here. So please add your questions to the chat. We promise that no question is a bad question. Also, we're not going to attach a question to a particular person. So if you're nervous about asking a question, don't be. We won't share your name or anything. And the chat is not available to everybody to see. So just wanted to let you know that. So as we're kind of getting wrapped up here, and before we go to the question and answer period, how about we get some final thoughts from both of you? Lori Z, we'll start with you first.
Sure. I think for me as a business owner, for my clients as nonprofits, and for you as people that work at nonprofits, it's so important. Something that I've learned in this time is that you can't expect the same result from what you might have done before that worked. Things are changing by the day. And if direct mail worked really for you, if, just sending an email with no real alignment to mission was able to get you a couple grand, that's great, but it's doubtful that's going to work in the same way. You have to be courageous and try some new things, whether it's training for yourself, training for your development folks, whether it's a new script or just speaking to new types of people, or maybe you're someone that just really enjoys just emailing back and forth with someone, trying a Zoom meeting, talking to someone in face to face, right? So that is my biggest piece of advice I want to leave people with. Now is not the time to do what used to be tried and true, because it's all changing. We've got to try new things. And if you do, I think you're going to be very pleased and you're going to be very successful.
That's great advice, Lori. My advice would be back to the fact that we can't attend in-person events. Attend those virtual events while you can during this time, and get back into attending in-person events throughout Northeast Ohio when we're able to, so that you can network and be seen. And keep those conversations going with the funders and check in regularly. Something might not be a good fit right now, but in 4 months from now, something could pop up and you can remember back to your conversation with that funder and realize, oh my goodness, this is like the perfect fit. Give them a call and find out you have now a partnership that you can work towards. So keep that in mind and keep good notes on that, and keep following up. And let's say you don't have something that's a good fit. I would recommend, touching base like quarterly, or just sending a quick email to say hi and hello. Say hi to them when you see them, just so that you're top of mind and that you can easily get into that conversation down the road should you have a funding opportunity that's a good fit. You will eventually find the right fit.
All Right, so we are at the point where we are going to ask the Lori some of your questions. Please enter those into chat. I did see one come through in our question and answer, so we do have one through our question and answer, but please submit your questions. This is a great opportunity. Lori and Lori both have an extraordinary amount of experience in this corporate space, and it's one of those things that I think is very elusive for a lot of nonprofits to tap into. So please take advantage of them being here with us today. So the question that we have is, how can small arts and culture nonprofits who have little nexus to the corporate interests that Lori described be noticed? So, right now, I think that question is really valid because the arts organizations aren't really, they're not health and human services, they're not in the COVID space. How can they be seen by corporations?
I'm going to jump in on this one, Lori.
All right.
To start. So first of all, if you are an arts-based nonprofit, this is a tough time. You don't know about performance schedules. You just don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, my best advice for you right now is to start with your individual major donors. Your individual major donors are connected to organizations in some way. They can be board members. They can be advisory board members. Maybe they're on committees. Maybe they're still employed with these organizations. Honestly, with arts is an emotional thing. It makes you feel something. That's why we go. We want to laugh. We want to cry. We want to be happy, right? So when you're talking about something emotional, that's something that speaks to an individual. So I would highly suggest you talk to your higher major donors, or the ones that you would start with, the ones you enjoy talking to, right? And just ask them. It's amazing. There is nothing wrong with asking for referrals per se as a nonprofit. Why not? I mean, it makes a lot of sense to, if someone's a raving fan of your organization so much that they're going to give you money or give you sponsorship dollars, they're the perfect organization or person to talk to partner you with other folks. So that would be my suggestion, starting in the major donor route to get an introduction to an organization.
That's good advice, Lori. And I would add too, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, Arts Cleveland, there are organizations out there that you can reach out to. They have webinars in they're offering a lot of free webinars right now on for arts and culture organizations and what to do in this space. And I'll add to Lori too, what's unfortunate for Cleveland, and I've seen this in talking to some of our funders who do support arts and culture. Cleveland doesn't have an emergency arts and culture fund like some cities do, such as Chicago. There's no bank of funding available to help organizations through this time. And so that's unfortunate for us. But I think what's happening too, especially with racial equity, is you can, be creative. Try to find ways through the arts that you can get a message out there, because that's very important to many corporations and might bridge your ability to be an arts and culture organization and pairing it with an issue right now that might be attractive for a corporation to fund.
So we have another question, which I think this one's very interesting. So are you finding that funders and corporate sponsors are choosing not to sponsor at all, or just sponsoring at a lesser level? Are there any specific trends that you're seeing right now?
I can take this from Northeast Ohio and IdeaStream. I'm actually finding that we're struggling most with foundations right now. And a lot of them is because they're money tied to the stock market. And so when the market took a hit in March, it affects some of their upcoming deadlines. And so we either are not getting as much funding, or we've been asked to delay our ask to a later deadline, which we have agreed to do. Corporations though, and I don't know if it's because we finally hit the nail on the head with some of the opportunities we have, but there have been a couple corporations, actually 3, that I've been in conversation with for years. past 3 years, and we just have not been able to find a good fit on some partnerships. But COVID had presented some opportunities for us of doing things a little differently that we've never been able to do before, and create partnerships that we probably otherwise would not have had. And we were able to get some funding from the corporate sector. So I really think it's about finding the right partnership that's attractive to those corporations. And so I think in that respect, it's the timing as it related to that.
To the beginning of the question, I think somebody had asked about, are people spending less, or how are they spending? Yes, and some are spending just the same.
Right.
The key is, and I think Lori hit on this a bit, if you've got a project idea, a program that's extremely niche, that speaks to an organization, it doesn't matter what's going on, you know? Like I used to say, I like to say that, you know, the Rockefellers were still very active during the Depression. There were still a lot of advertisers very active during the Depression. It's just they found a niche opportunity. So I'll give you a great example. I work with 2 animal protective leagues, and both of them affected by COVID. They're both still not open to the public. You can still adopt an animal, but it's by, you know, by appointment only. But initially they saw, you know, their hopes of corporate sponsorship, just like, oh, Lori, what are we going to do? But here's what COVID did. COVID opened up this area about hunger, right? The food banks started to get busier. These families have pets. They can't afford to feed their pets. So that opened up a whole new area for these companion animal nonprofits to partner with a food bank to get them donated pet food. So people can have their basic food needs met for the week for their humans, families, and then for cats, for birds, for dogs, whatever, food was donated from all different types of sources, as well as money, into the rescue organizations. That is an example of something you wouldn't have thought of right away of COVID. How does COVID relate to an animal protective league, right? But it did. So thinking out of the box, and I hate using that term because it's used so much, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Just out of the box, get very, very niche. And you'd be surprised if it's really niche and it speaks to someone, an organization. It doesn't matter what's going on in the environment. They're going to find a way to make it work.
Well, we have a few minutes left today, and first I want to just thank the Loris for joining us today and talking about you know, corporate giving and in this environment. And again, thank you for spending time with us today and sharing your insight. Before we go, I just want to also thank our attendees for coming and just share with you some upcoming seminars that we're going to be having, or webinars. So next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about making the most of your virtual event. We're going to be specifically talking about the auction part of this. And so Tina Kramer from Walsh Jesuit High School and Sheila Hurley from Community Hospice are going to be joining us next week. Both have actually run auctions for their organizations and have done so successfully in COVID environment. Both have learned a lot along the way as well. So hopefully you can join us for that particular webinar. And then on Tuesday, July 14th, our .org team is actually going to be talking about how to communicate with your donors before, during, and after your event. So we're going to be actually really just talking about how do you implement a lot of these things that we've talked about in the other webinars, and being able to put those into action for your donors right away. So we're going to, if you need to contact any of us. Here is everybody's contact information. So Lori and Lori, feel free to reach out to them if you have any specific questions that you might feel are that you know, I'm always that person who 10 minutes after goes, oh shoot, I had a question that I needed to ask. If you're that person, feel free to email any of us. And if you feel like it's something that might be good for the entire group, we can certainly share that as well. We will be sending out a survey. Your feedback is really important on these webinars as we continue to do them. We want them to be better. We want you to use your time wisely. So we'll be sending out a survey. We've already implemented some of the things, or tried to implement some of the things you suggested from last week's webinar, and we'll continue to do that. So you'll be getting that webinar shortly. So again, thank you everyone for coming today. We really appreciate you joining us, and good luck to you on all of your events and fundraising activities. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.